So, good morning. Today I am starting a little audio journey log, and it's going to be the journey log for my campaign, which I started to run this week. As a background, I always wanted to run the Uturia games from Das Schwarze Auge 4.1. But of course, there is an issue with that. There is no good source book. You basically have to piece it together using the literature that is there. And of course, you also need to find people to play this with. And a lot of people, don't want to play the old adventures, which I think is probably not understandable considering the quality of the DSA 5 stuff that has been released is... or varies, I should say. I mean, you all know that Donnerwacht, I did a review of that one, is an abysmally bad campaign. I've kind of come to understand the Bornland campaign a little bit better, so I don't think it's as abysmally bad as it seems, although a lot of people don't like it either. I think it's got its moments, which are really good, but I think it has issues which I won't go into detail now. I will start talking about the Bornland campaign in more detail when I start playing it. I've run one adventure and I've read, or kind of skim read, a second one out of this one, but I will probably be playing as a player in that campaign. So this particular campaign is at the moment called Mittelreichkampagne. The reason is I didn't want to kind of like be too obvious about what I was going to do, but I mean, I have let the players know what kind of a direction we're going in. Since only two of them have ever played together, one of them has only ever played half an adventure in DSA 5, and it was one of my introductory rounds that he was actually in, and I recruited him from there. The other one has kind of played, and he's I believe he's also run DSA games, or maybe not DSA, but pen and paper, and he knows pen and paper. But only two of them have ever played together. They also happen to be husband and wife, so they're also in the same room, which sometimes helps, I guess, during the game. Anyway, so the first part of the campaign is based very loosely on a adventure from DSA 1, I believe. It was released in 1988, and it's called Der Wolf von Winhall. And a lot of people say that this game module has a lot of plot holes in it. That may be true, but I haven't really looked at the actual module so much as I have looked at a modification thereof, which has been done by the Alrics, and I've mentioned their channel multiple times on my own because I think that they're the best, I would really say that the best German-speaking role-playing channel there is, both from a player interaction, game master interaction, preparation, setup, but also the technical expertise that they bring to the table with regard to how they present the game to an audience that is, of course, only vicariously experiencing the role-play is exceptional and of the highest order, and I can only recommend them. They're really, really great. So basically, we have 4 players, and 2 of them are from Torval. We've got a Torval Swafnir Geweihter, and we've got a Torval Skalde, and we've got a Tulamidian gypsy, who basically specializes in going to country fairs and juggling and dancing. And then we've got a young knight from Garet, who's just been given his knighthood and is now basically wandering the realm to get experience, I guess. This young knight actually made it to Gratenfels and was recruited by Balthasar Balthusius to accompany him to an alchemist lottery in Kaldenberg. And he went there and he protected the Magister and then brought him back safely, and is now in Gratenfels in an inn. All good adventures start in an inn. And is basically, like biding his time there. It's evening, and the others I decided to suggest to the bard that he could have been in Horningen, which is a couple of days down the road, where they have a 4-yearly bard convention where bards are then invited to perform, and they can basically participate in a competition, and then the best bards will be chosen from the performers. And I said to him, well, this could be a reason for you to be where you are. The other one is obviously a priest, so he is traveling to spread the belief in his god, which is not one of the 12 gods. It's Swafnir. It's a whale god. He's not like Effort, but he is of course also in charge of the sea and waters, but I guess mainly the sea. And the gypsy was basically traveling the realm because she had fallen out with her tribe over something that she now regrets, and I don't want to give up the whole story because the other players don't know it, and they might be listening, although I don't think they will. And so she's basically also making her way through the Midden Realm and trying to do what she does best, going from fair to fair. So she would have met the bard in Horningen, because obviously where there are bards, where there's a competition, where there is a festival, you can also do her stuff. You can dance, you can do some juggling and gaukelei and that kind of thing. And now they're all on their way to Garet, and they have made it to Gratenfels, which is all in Albernia. So we're still in Albernia. And there they are sitting in an inn, and one of them finds a newspaper. And they start reading, and it's the Horninger Morgen. So I don't know if this one exists. I made it up, and I basically talk a little bit about the bard competition. So I wrote a little article on that one, and then I got something about the problem that is the Wolf von Winhal. So in Winhal, they've had issues where people have been killed, their throats have been torn open, livestock has been killed. And at this stage, people believe that it's a werewolf, and the mayor has decided to offer some money for people to go and find out what's going on. And then a dwarf comes into the inn, and he sits down, and basically the three of them are talking about Winhal because they have been reading the newspaper, and he picks up on what they're saying, and then he says, well, that's nothing. Several months ago, the Hochgeweihte of the Boron temple has gone missing, and that's even worse. I mean, you don't just lose the head of a temple, and nobody knows where he went. And he says, the mayor is now under real pressure because of all of this happening. There's a religious problem because he's lost the high priest of his temple, of one of the temples, and nobody knows where he went. Then you've got, in addition, all of these murders, which might be the work of a werewolf, which is never a good thing. So now Garet has heard about this, and they are sending someone. So I'm kind of loosey-goosey on the details here because depending on when you set it, this was set in the early thousands, I think 1005 BF. I think they are already independent. I'm not sure. So basically, Garet wouldn't have sent anything. It would have been Havina probably. But I in this particular case, I leave the meta plot out, because no one of them knows the meta plot. They are not familiar with it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So for me, this is an introduction because I want them to be able to learn how to play together. I want them to get used to, because two of them don't really know that much about the world itself. So they do need to kind of come to understand what it's like. It's a very low fantasy world, so they have to get used to this as well. So I've just left out the meta plot. I mean, the meta plot will come in once we get to the Oturia part of the campaign, but at the moment it doesn't matter. So I've just, to make things simple, somebody's coming from Garet. That's also in the original adventure, that somebody is coming. His name is Dexter Nemrod, and he's an inquisitor, and he's there to basically check out what the hell is going on in Winhal. Now, in the actual adventure, they're supposed to work against time to be quicker than him, but I don't really want to turn this into one of those racy adventures. I want them to take their time. So Dexter may or may not show up. I haven't made up my mind, but it's good that, it kind of hammers home the situation, because none of them are from Vinhal. None of them are even from the region. So, because the first thing was, oh my God, they've got werewolves, we're not going there. And then you as a game master kind of go, oh my God, what am I going to do now? But I kind of have a plan for this. If they had said that they're not going to go there, I would have just had them attacked by a werewolf at night, and they wouldn't have. And basically then they would have found out if they bring this dead werewolf, and I assume that they would have killed it, to Vinhal, which isn't that far away actually from where they are. It's about 2 days. They will get 60 ducats of gold, which is a huge amount of money, because none of them have money. They're all broke. Well, more or less, so of course you can say that this is railroading, but like I said in my motivation video or podcast, yeah, it is railroading, but at the same time, as a game master, you have prepared an adventure. How they get to that adventure may take different routes, but at the end of the day, this is the adventure you've prepared. And you also have to get and the players also have to accept that they have to play ball, as it were. They have to engage with what's there. If I've prepared something based on the Wolf of Vinhal, and then they decide, oh, actually, I would like to play Die Sieben Gezeichneten, which is the Borberat campaign. That's great, but then I will have to say for a month or so I can't do anything, because I will have to read up on the whole campaign, which is 1,040 pages, read it at least twice, and that's going to be a chore because I also have a life, before I can even say how to set this up. So it's just one of those things where you have to say, okay, they kind of engaged with it, although their initial thought was, oh my God, I don't want to go there because there's werewolves. Then, of course, the dwarf came in, and that wasn't planned. I thought that if I gave them I had 2 newspapers prepared. I learned one thing about Roll20. When you show somebody something, they can't enlarge it. So it was quite difficult to read. So I didn't show them the second newspaper, which would have expanded on the story, because they had enough problems reading it in the first place. So I didn't do that, but instead I brought in the dwarf. And then I also, because for the tavern scene, I've got a backdrop, which is the keeper screen of DSA 5. And that's basically a tavern scene. And there are people on it. There's a dwarf, there's an elven hunter or huntress that comes in, So basically I said, well, everything you see on this backdrop is actually there. Everyone you see is there. And then they basically say, okay, well, there's a huntress. Maybe she knows stuff. So I hadn't prepared for this at all. But, this is how you roll. So this is really how things unfolded. And she basically gave them some information about werewolves that they hadn't found out through their own roles. They still don't know everything about werewolves, but they had some idea going in. I totally expected the knight to say, okay, well, if we're leaving, we might want to ask Magister Paltusius, because I had said at the beginning of the game that he now has a contact in the city, because he protected Magister Balthusius, he helped him, Magister Balthusius gave him 15 ducats, and he is now his contact, so, and he knows that he's an alchemist, but the player didn't make that connection at all, which I thought was a bit strange, because if I know that I'm going to go up against a supernatural being, a wizard alchemist might be a person I could consult, but they didn't, or he didn't come up with the idea, so I asked him for a knowledge roll. So I basically said, roll 1d20, and he rolled a 20, which is a total failure. So I was like, yeah, nothing. I didn't tell him what I wanted to roll him for, because it's what I wanted him to roll for, I should say, because I didn't want to give it away, but it didn't even occur to him. So the next day, I basically made it easier on them. I said, you can take boats up the Tommel, or actually down river towards Vinhal, down the Tommel, but you have to walk the rest. So they did this. They got on a boat, and then on the first night they came to Aran, where basically they stopped. They spent the night there. There's a small inn, and then they went on the boat the next day. And then the boat comes to the end of its journey and then they have to walk. Because, of course, there is an incident with a werewolf and you cannot have this on a river. That would be very, very difficult. So, because I had prepared, this is something that I took straight from the Alrics. The Alrics actually plunge right into it, but it's different for them because the players and the characters knew each other already. So they were already traveling together. So their opening is slightly different in that it actually opens with them journeying at night. They kind of got caught by the night and they and it's raining and it's a terrible, I think it's raining as well, and they make their way and they come to a farm. It's completely dark already and they basically explore the farm and they find 5 freshly dug graves with decaying corpses in them, and the farmhouse is wide open. There is blood everywhere. Food has already gone bad, the water's gone stale, and they also find somebody who hanged himself. And as they're exploring, they are then attacked by a werewolf. So basically, I really wanted to have this scene because I think it's brilliantly done. And it's also a way of introducing the players to different types of explorations. On the one hand, you have the type of exploration and investigation where you go to talk to people. And then you have the type of exploration where you have to explore an unknown environment. And for this, I used Roll20's possibility of dynamic lighting. So, because of course it's night, because werewolves don't come out during the day. They only come out, well, as far as we know at the moment, they come out on the night of the full moon. So it's of course dark. And most of us who don't live in rural areas, and most of us don't, and even in rural areas, you have light pollution these days, have completely forgotten that if you are somewhere where there is no light, because you are away from civilization, and when it's dark outside, you only have the light source that you have. There is no other light. It is, if there is no moon and there are no stars, although the stars only give off very dim light. I mean, I've never seen anything lit up by stars. I've seen scenery lit up by the moon. When you don't have light, it is actually completely dark. And so what I did was I gave them a group token which lights up the surrounding area for a radius of 2 meters. So the diameter of the lighting is 4 meters. Because in DSA, the radius of a torch is 2 meters. So you can basically make the setting, and then I put them on the map. And the map is essentially the actual floor plan of the farm. So the way the farm looks, you've got some trees there, you've got a water well there, you've got the 5 graves, you've got a barn, and you've got the house itself. But of course, they could only see the 4 meters in diameter of light. Everything else was plunged in darkness. So they really had to explore it, and they didn't know what they were seeing. And then they made it into the house, they explored that, and then they said, is there any light sources here? And I said, yeah, there are lanterns there, there are torches there, there are also candles there. And so when they lit this, I expanded the light that comes off of their dynamic light that comes off of the token that represented the group, because after a while it also gets a bit old. You do want to kind of like keep things mysterious. You don't want to give away everything because otherwise there is no exploration. But you also, at some point, it kind of is important that they know where they are. And I kind of thought, okay, well, now they're in the house. Of course they know. They've walked through the house, they've explored the house. They can kind of remember what it looks like, and it would be highly unusual if you have a house that is inhabited by people or used to be inhabited by people not too long ago, that there are no light sources. So I asked them to just basically start lighting the house. So not the house on fire, but lighting light sources in the house. And then, of course, this light would emanate from the windows and basically start lighting the yard as well. Then I said, okay, now in the house you have found 4 additional, because they were also afraid that they might lose their own torches, you know. So they basically took light sources from the house, and each one got one. So I expanded the light circle around them so that they could explore a little more quickly. And that went quite well. So they found different things. They also checked out the dead bodies, confirmed that they were not killed by the person that had hung himself in the barn, because they had basically been attacked by some animal, so probably it could be a bear or something. So they basically then bury the corpses, and then they and then the Swafnirgeweihte blesses the earth and the graves, which is in game terms that undead can't rise if they were undead, and also that let me just check. I think it is also to do with undead. I'm just gonna read this. Grabsegen. I think it is 323. Yeah, so because that's sometimes important to know what I'm talking about as well. For those of you who don't know this this game. Okay, so basically, it is the grave is now consecrated, and if you want to steal the dead body from the grave, you have to make a willpower check, -1, and if you fail that test, you can't dig up the grave. And if you want to use necromantic, magic on it, it is also more difficult, -1, and the whole thing lasts 12 months. So it would make it more difficult to bring them back, and also to steal them. So both magical and profane interference with the graves would be more difficult. So at a -1, which is very, very good, considering that magic isn't as strong in DSA 5 as it used to be in previous editions. And then of course, you know, the story was, or the time was coming to an end, because we play for about 3 hours. And then I said, well, you know, as you're doing this, you know, digging, or well, the graves had already been dug, but they had to basically put all of the earth back onto the dead bodies, and then do the consecration, which takes about an hour. So I said, well, you know, this is about an hour. And then I said, well, as you're doing this and as you're finishing up, you hear a scream, a human scream, and it's somebody terrified for their lives. And they're like, oh yeah, I draw my weapon. I said, okay, so do you turn around, because it's coming from the road from which you came before you found this place. And so they turn around. I said, well, you see a person running towards you. I'm behind it. Well, of course, in there, you know, it's like, you know, how far away are they? Because it's dark, so how far away are they? But I said, well, you're giving off enough light so that about, you know, 10 feet away, suddenly you see this man, and you can see in the shadows something running towards you on 4 legs, and it's running really, really quickly. And that's where we ended that first session. So, yeah, in the next round, they will be encountering a probably werewolf. We'll see. But that was number 1, the first installment. I don't know how long we will be playing this campaign. I hope that we will make it to Uthuria, because I would really like to explore that continent. But I will keep doing those vlogs. I mean, they will probably only be about 10 minutes or so, because we only play for 2.5 to 3 hours. But just, you know, even for myself to keep a record of what's happening, and also for me to be able to gather my thoughts and contemplate how each session went, because as a game master, you're constantly doubting yourself, or you're constantly thinking, okay, so how could I do this differently? And I will also probably do another session today about tools that I use. I did a session on, or a podcast on, how to play DSA 5 on a shoestring. Today, I'm going to talk about other sources that I use, which are not free, where you have to pay some money, but I will also explain what kind of tools I use. So until such time, I wish you a pleasant Saturday. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.